Thank you. So I thought I'd start today by talking about a product. The reason I want to talk about the Bankwest Halo Ring is because it encapsulates some key elements of the story I'm about to tell. So you may or may not have seen the Halo Ring, but it's basically a credit card that wraps around your finger and it's a wearable device. So you use it at your FPOS terminals and you tap and go and pay for goods. And it's been a big success. One of the reasons it's been a big success is because it started with a customer problem statement. It didn't start as a piece of technology looking for a problem. If we'd started looking for some wearables, we'd probably be doing Apple Pay and other things. What we started with was some research from a cross-functional team. It was actually a hack day, looking at why do customers still need cash? And we found that there are a lot of customers who don't have smartphones. There are a lot of people who don't want to carry their wallet. A lot of use cases, scenarios we were exercising. And having something that you wear and is waterproof and doesn't have to be charged is really, really useful. So it started with the customer experience at its heart, which is at the heart of the transformation I'm going to talk about. It was also the first product we delivered in our new ways of working and new delivery model. So from the hack day, we did 6 weeks of prototyping 4 different wearables before we landed on this one. 6 weeks later, we had a pilot group using it out and about around town. And from there, we rolled out into production, and we've been scaling it and iterating, building it out ever since. So it's a really good reminder of why we're doing the transformation that we're doing and what the different ways of working can deliver. And finally, whenever you use this product, you always get a funny response. And it reminds me as a leader to exhibit some humility and be humble and recognize that you're not always right. So you get some funny responses. The funniest one I've had was actually in India, where someone looked at what I was doing and he said, is that like Samsung Pay? And I said, well, yeah, kind of. It's kind of similar. He goes, oh, wow, can you make phone calls on it? But by far the one that makes me feel really, really humble is I'm a very forgetful person, which is why this is the product for me. I'm always forgetting things. I'm the kind of person who puts their keys in their shoes to remember to take your key before you leave the house, and then I go and change my shoes and forget my keys. So this is fantastic. However, I had to have my photo taken. I never know what to do with my hands when I'm public speaking, but also when I'm having my photo taken. So I sort of stand there like that, and then I kind of do this, put the hands in pockets. That's no good. So the photographer said, look, put your hand on the cubicle and just rest it there and look relaxed. So I did that. And he said, put your halo ring on your left hand. So cue lots of jokes about being married to the bank, 20 years, all of that. Don't tell your wife, blah, blah, blah. So I swapped my wedding ring. And of course, had my photo taken as my alternative career as male model. Go out to lunch with my wife and completely forget it's on the wrong hand. Go up to pay with my wedding ring. Cue lots of laughter from the lady serving me, to which my wife and my daughter was there, come over. Everyone in the restaurant's cracking up laughing at this complete muppet is trying to pay for his lunch using his wedding ring. And that theme of being wrong, learning, being prepared to cop a few, bit of public humiliation is probably pretty central to the story as well. So a little bit about Bankwest, for those that don't know. So we used to be the State Bank of Western Australia, but for the last 10 years we've been part of Commonwealth Bank, but we run pretty separately, a separate brand, and a separate tech stack. So we've got a big tech modernisation program going on, where we run our own core banking system, which we're API enabling with things like Kafka and GraphQL. Loads and loads of really, really exciting work. We've got around 4,000 staff, mostly in this building on the right, or the left, depending which way you're looking. We have 100 branches, around 1 million customers, split pretty much 50-50 across the eastern seaboard and the west coast. And we've been doing Agile since about 2010. So the original pitch for Agile went something like this. We've got customers with lots of problems to solve, and we've got all these really cool engineers who love solving customers' problems. Happy days, except we had this thing called enterprise IT in the middle, which we described as a maze. And the people on the left and the people on the right just see this opaque, big, monolithic kind of machine, and they have no idea how to navigate it. Sometimes you go in, you may never come out. That's not unheard of. If you're lucky, you'll find a way through that's pretty quick. Really, really important stuff tends to sort of get fast-tracked. And the people inside the maze don't even know they're in a maze. They just know that they're sending people left and right, back and forth. So that was kind of what the world was like before we started Agile. So we did Agile software development. And obviously that helped to get the engineers closer to the customer, understanding the colleagues, the users, and the end customers' needs, building empathy. And we got better products as a result. No doubt about that. And we moved those IT processes off to the side, and things got a bit better. But it had limited impact. And it had limited impact because to the left, you've got 18 months worth of prep work going on before anything actually hits the Agile Scrum teams. You've then got several sprints going in a cycle of Agile sprints building something, which could be a month, it could be 6 months. And then if it's legacy, particularly, you'd have at least 2 months and monolithic code deployment processes. Greenfield stuff, we got the CI/CD pipelines, we got it all automated and had really, really quick intraday releases and feature toggles and all that cool stuff. But like any legacy organization, we've got a lot of old monolithic structures and applications that we have to manage. So the amount of impact we had with what I'll call agile software development was quite limited at an enterprise level. So Q, around 18 months ago, we started to look at this problem, and as luck would have it, we had a new MD come in who wanted the organization to be agile end-to-end. He has a tech background, software engineer, which is fantastic, so truly understands the problem and the work, and really wanted to bring some of the agile principles to play across the whole organization end-to-end. We also had a big tech strategy and tech modernization play. So the agile transformation really takes care of this up to 18 months bit. The tech automation and platformification is about speeding up the sprints and then the time to release. So we turned the bank on its head, changed the structure end to end, new executive team and executive roles. And a couple of things, you don't have to read the whole diagram, it's a bit busy. But a couple of important things. We built one distribution business. So before we had a single line of business or division doing the distribution, we had different channels operating in silos. And critically, the digital platform was a channel. So we had branches, we had brokers, we had business bankers, we had call centers, and then we had this thing called digital. So bringing that all together into a single distribution business running on a single digital platform has been one of the big sort of shifts that we've made. The other one that you'll see there in the kind of greeny color, the optimized customer experience. So customer experience, so CX design, UX, service design, marketing, personas, customer journey mapping is now the center of our organization. That's where products and services are now built and designed. And the customer is at the heart of everything we do, customer research, etc. Previously, that would have been the products division, very, very product-centric, like many banks. We changed the way we're working, so we call it Blaze. That's kind of our internal branding, and that's what we call the new ways of working. And probably nothing too different to what a lot of organizations are doing. There's elements of the kind of Spotify model with tribes and chapters. We have Scrum teams within there that we call squads. And they're multidisciplinary. That's really the key kind of change there. It's driving a much more innovative culture. And we have platforms, like everyone else, designed to be running over self-service APIs. And we're building out those platforms as we go to get that balance of autonomy and leverage. So we want our tribes building solutions to be autonomous, or as autonomous as they can, and the platforms we built for that leverage. So again, nothing too earth-shattering there. That's quite a common model that we've kind of custom designed, taking the best of a lot of different methodologies. And then finally, actually, my favorite and one of the biggest impacting bits is having a single operating rhythm across the bank. So how we do strategy, how we do our planning, what we do on an annual basis, quarterly, monthly, fortnightly, weekly, is consistent across all of our tribes and all of our platforms. So there's only one way to get work into the system. Previously, it was far too easy for people to just lob any kind of requirements into the system and onto the backlog at any point in time. Very, very disruptive to the way of working. We now have a very consistent cadence around how things happen. And that's made a huge difference. So our increment planning all happens on the same week across all of the tribes and platforms. And that means we can optimize all the dependencies and things like that. So in a nutshell, that's the model. I'm not going to dwell on it for too long because that's not really the point of the talk. What I'm going to share now is 5 lessons that I've taken away on reflection from 12 months of building and designing that and rolling it out. And we've been 5 months since we rolled it out across the bank end to end. So there's quite a lot that we've learned in that time. And some of these feel like really simple, really obvious lessons in hindsight. So if you all think, look, duh, don't blame you, but hear me out. So the first one, which seems really obvious, is enterprise agile and agile software development are not the same thing. Now, it took me a long time to actually realize this. If you go to the Agile Manifesto and look at the values, they're all pretty consistent. Any enterprise agile transformation is going to have most of those values. The main difference is agile software development. The original Agile Manifesto is all about software development, whereas enterprise agile is much more generic, much more broader. It's about how you do work in an enterprise, regardless whether the product is a piece of software or technology or not. But the values are pretty similar. You can then go to the principles, and the principles on this side are very much about how you develop software. So things in there around technical excellence, things about how you build great software products. On the right here, I've taken this from the Enterprise Agile Manifesto, which you can look up. But they're very common. Any management consulting company that's out there selling agile transformations is going to have something very, very similar to this. And they're aligned. They're not completely dissimilar, but these are much, much broader. And so what that means is the people coming in and getting trained in Enterprise Agile, the management consultants coming in and helping us do this transformation, the 1,000 or so colleagues coming out of the business in traditional roles and siloed roles, coming to work in these tribes with their engineering colleagues, actually know nothing about technology and software engineering necessarily. Some of them may do. And if you go back to the original software engineering, when we brought the customer and the engineers together, it was quite easy. There was a small number of people coming out of the business into the world of technology, and they were learning about the SDLC as they went. We've now thrown hundreds, if not thousands of people into this world, and we haven't necessarily recognized that there's this real difference. And that leads to this. Again, you can Google it. But, quite humorous. Like all humor, there's a grain of truth in it. And anyone who's been exposed to agile management consultants will recognize a lot of this. And this quickly did the rounds amongst the engineering community because we didn't articulate that these are different things. Enterprise agility, the goals and the purpose and the objectives of it are quite different to just building software. And if you don't separate them and you don't make that context recognizable, you end up with people looking at this and going, look, this ain't agile. And the reality is they're maybe two sides of the same coin, but they're quite different. So, a couple of tips for anyone going through an enterprise agile transformation would be make sure you actually think about how you educate people around the SDLC. You can't take for granted that people know what CI/CD is and DevOps and that these things make sense to anyone. And the worst thing that happens is people who have experience from like 25 years ago, we had people coming in asking for functional specs. And suddenly, like the engineers are going, what? You were supposed to be going agile, and you're taking us back 25 years. But people just go with what they know, right? So training for people coming out of business into what this IT world is all about is really important. The technology leadership roles, particularly engineering management, architecture, really, really different in a world where you've got a much more diverse and blended multidisciplinary set of teams than when you've just got an engineering team building a product. So thinking about changing those roles, the skills and capabilities that you need in them. And then finally, a really important one that's making a huge difference to us is using data to measure the system. So we now have our DevOps metrics in our overall business dashboard alongside customer NPS, financial performance, risk management metrics. And that's really helped to kind of level the playing field, because when you start to talk about change cycle times and error rates and some of those kind of lean type things, that becomes a common language across business and technology. So that's really one thing that's really helped us, and we're still building out. So the next one, and anyone who's been through a large-scale agile transformation will probably recognize this, even a small agile transformation. Agile can quickly become a cult. I recognize this when you kind of walk around the organization and you're talking about people and you ask a simple question like, why are you doing that? And they go, oh, we're agile. we don't actually know. It's just we've heard that this is how you do things agile, and we're just following blindly with this herd mentality. The worst example of this I think I saw and I heard about and I talked to some of the agile coaches about was a team that do they have a ticketing system to do support tasks that are fairly routine, repeatable, looking after PCs and monitors. And they were having some trouble writing their user stories. Well, that's interesting. Why are you writing user stories? And they were applying Scrum, and they were taking their tickets out of their service management tool, trying to rewrite them as Jira story cards, doing sprint planning, and before we knew it, their SLA had gone from 1 day turnaround time to 5 day turnaround time. And you step back and you look at this is crazy, what are you doing? So I asked the Agile coach, why aren't you doing Kanban? It seems pretty simple. And what they said was the team themselves had selected the Scrum method because the way we'd rolled out the training was so indoctrinated and so powerful, and we built this really strong cult around it that they thought that they were doing the right thing, and they thought that that was how you become agile and effective, completely bypassing the overall purpose of what we're trying to achieve as an organisation. So I look to, this is one of my favourite books, so if you take nothing else away as an action, I would recommend going and reading this book. If you want to understand how cults work, this book by Cialdini talks about weapons of influence. And this is based in a lot of scientific research and experiments over the last 50 years, and explains all sorts of human behaviours that are not rational. And it's absolutely brilliant. But there's one there called Social Proof, and he talks about the Jonestown Massacre. And these are the people who literally drank the Kool-Aid, and about 980 people, I think, committed suicide, and how he used this concept of social proof, which is a small number of people doing something that then people will follow in a herd-like mentality. But he also talks about how you can fight these weapons. You can use these weapons for good. Influence is a good thing to have as a leader, but you can use them for evil. And sometimes you've got to recognise when people are using them on you. So he talks about how to defend. And some really simple things, and I said a lot of this talk is like the bleeding obvious, but objective facts, our prior experience, our judgment. These override any kind of cultish agile mentality and method. So the tips. Don't lose sight of the first principles of why you're doing an agile transformation. They should be front and centre. We're not here to be agile. We're here to deliver great products and solutions and experience and help our customers with their financial well-being. That's why we exist. That's why we come to work. We're running a business. Agile is just a tool and a method to get there. But we quickly lose sight of that, and agile becomes the end in itself. Agile coach is to coach people in making sensible decisions. Fundamentally, that's what we need, not just coaching them in methods. And I hate to say it, but I think we need to explicitly champion common sense as a first-class principle. You would think it's implicit. It rarely seems to be. So by far the most powerful lesson I think that I've taken away, and the one that really resonates with me and that is so true, is this one. Sunlight is the best medicine. It's a phrase I've used a lot, and I hear used a lot in the bank. And the idea is, you shine a light on a problem, and that's the best way to start solving the problem. It becomes medicinal. This model that we've adopted is very, very transparent. If you imagine that world with the maze, there was lots of places to hide in that maze. There was a lack of transparency and visibility from the customer end in terms of what was going on behind the maze in the engineering teams. As soon as you take that away, guess what? You're completely exposed. There is nowhere to hide. Poor technical practices, poor capability, lack of skills, lack of testing. We've found systems we didn't even know we had. Several. It's a weekly occurrence. So this idea of sunlight, I have to remind myself every single day, this is a good thing, this is why we're doing this. It is definitely making the business stronger. Like discovering all these problems that have existed and been sort of masked over and patched over and band-aided for years and years and years. Bringing them to the surface and resolving them is really, really powerful. However, if you've ever been to Western Australia, the sun is pretty strong and it burns. So this is a really important one. Another one of my favourite books and authors, this is a bit old now, but Nigel Marsh, if you haven't read the book, it's a really good one around sort of work-life balance and leadership. He's also got a really good TED Talk, if you want the kind of short version. But he talks about his leadership journey as a CEO and the realization when he thought he wasn't very good as a leader because he kept having problems, that business is constant white water. We are there to deal with problems. And what we're supposed to do is look at what's good about the situation, what can I learn and how can I improve it. It's something I tell myself every single day because we are not short of problems. We're not short of discovering them and pitching up and showing them. So, lessons, what would I do differently, or what have I learned from that? Firstly, the resilience of colleagues, but particularly leaders, and particularly technology leaders, going through the transformation in those first few months is really, really important. There's a lot of rhetoric in the lead up to our changes being rolled out around, we're going to fix forward, it's not going to be right first time, we're going to fail, it's going to be okay, that's how we'll learn. And until you do it, you don't really know what it feels like, the intensity of having everyone look at all the problems in your estate. So that resilience is really important. Secondly, the tone from the top. So how the most senior leaders respond to problems is probably the biggest determinant of whether you'll stick to your guns and have this great transparent model for managing your business, or whether you'll go back to kind of middle management fog and a good news culture that just sort of patches over everything and presents a nice facade. And I'm happy to say that at Bankwest, the support from the executives has been phenomenal in terms of receptiveness to bad news and how they've responded and the support they've given to the technology teams. And then finally, just a reminder that you've got to practice what you preach. We preached learning cultures and all the stuff from the playbook, but you've got to practice it, and you've got to be willing to take those hits and stand in front of people and show that you're often wrong. The next one, again, probably very obvious to anyone who really thinks about it, but the ceremonies in Agile are really superficial. They're really just the surface. They're not necessarily a signifier of a great high-performing team. You can have great Agile ceremonies over poor-performing teams. You can have great showcases if you've got a great showman, but you may not be building the right product. Equally, you can have great performing teams with lousy ceremonies. This one struck me on a couple of occasions. So one, we have a fantastic graduate program, very similar to the Seek one. And I ran into one of the grads, and they're usually doing really cool engineering stuff. They do all the cool new stuff with GraphQL and bring great new skills. Ran into one and said, what are you working on? Oh, I'm preparing for a showcase. Great, when is it? Can I come along? I'd love to see it. It's in 3 weeks' time. Oh, okay, that's a lot of preparation. So what are you doing? I'm developing a PowerPoint pack. It's a great indication of the kind of smells you can get by just looking at whether the ceremonies are effective. Why are you doing a PowerPoint pack? As it turns out, there were problems in the project. And the PowerPoint was to justify why we're not showcasing the product we're supposed to be building. Probably do that in a stand-up. Don't necessarily need 3 weeks of work to get there. The second one was another one of my favourites. So my wife works at the bank, and I was walking around the floor one day and saw her sat down at her stand-up. And like the sensitive new age husband that I am, I yelled out, "What the hell are you doing? It's a stand-up, you idiot." Which got the required response, which I won't repeat because I think I'm being filmed. But later that night, once we'd calmed down, I said, "So why were you sat down?" And she said, "Well, I wear high heels, and it's just not fair to make me stand up for an hour every day. I have to listen to my Scrum Master and tech lead having an argument." So really good indication as you kind of go around the organisation that, while the ceremonies may not be the thing, they're just the surface. They're good indicators of where there may be some dysfunction. So a couple of the recommendations. So really need to move Agile coaching to coaching the mindset of the leaders in leading a team. That's the point of the coaching. The point of the coaching is not to have great card walls, not to have great stand-ups, yet a huge amount of our Agile coaching focuses on those things, and we're shifting that now to coaching the mindset of the leaders, coaching the teams, actually getting them to perform and delivering. And you know what? It doesn't matter if we have to flex the ceremonies a little bit and do what suits the squads. But ceremonies, great way to sniff out the smells in the model. If they look odd, they probably is something wrong. And then finally, the one that often seems the most controversial and not the most popular point of view at times is that effective governance is now a mission-critical capability in our organisation. So I often talk about the airline industry. So the safest form of transport out there is also the most heavily regulated, and it's also the fastest. So, velocity and regulation are not incompatible. It's not the quality of the engine that allows you to drive fast, it's the quality of the brakes in your car. We often get the resistance around this because what typically happens is people say there's no value in governance, and by governance I mean steercos and architecture review boards and the things that set the parameters within which you can operate. And usually it's a very narrow-held view that says, well, there's no value to me as an individual. I already know what I'm doing. I don't need this committee to tell me. Completely ignoring that there's value for everyone else in the organisation and other stakeholders. It also usually comes from the fact that governance has, frankly, been operated very, very poorly across organisations for many, many years. The worst example I ever came across in the old world was a change request document that was 11 pages to justify an $8,000 overspend on a $10 million project that had already happened 2 months ago. And 15 people have to read 11 pages, sit around a boardroom and go, what difference are we making as governors? So poorly executed governance, I totally agree, is a complete waste of time, gets in the way and serves nobody. There is no reason why you can't freshen it up and make it effective. And in fact, if you're going to go fast, and particularly if you're in a regulated industry like banking, you really, really need that effective governance. So things we've done that have really helped us: lean architecture processes. We've completely revamped how we do architecture and delegated the decision making, and the only thing we ask is that decisions are recorded, so long as they're operating within these broad guardrails. Make sure the governance is designed for purpose and not because that's the way it's always been done. And the other thing is opening up the governance forum. I've found it's brilliant bringing in different sort of secretariats, and grads come in and people have different roles, and just that exposure so people can actually understand what it's really about. There's a lot of mythology from people who hear about steercos or risk committees and this, that and the other and don't really know what they're there to do. So that's my series of lessons in a nutshell. It's been a fantastic ride. We've had an amazing set of outcomes. We're continuing to deliver some great products. But it's bloody hard work. I don't think I was ready in terms of that resilience and the shit storm that we were facing into in terms of what it's going to be like when you really turn an organisation on its head and start to move at pace and start to play that demand directly into the engineering teams. So that's it. If you're ever in Western Australia, look me up, connect on LinkedIn. We're a very open organisation. We welcome people to come and visit, have a look around. We always learn as much from showing people around as you'll learn from us. And if you're not coming to Western Australia, why not? It's a fantastic place, and hopefully we'll have a CTO summit there next year. Thank you.
Okay.